One of the things you'll never get from Australian media is a mea culpa. Media will never apologise for getting it wrong or causing harm or grief to the people of Australia, unless, of course, they're legally forced to do so. They will nonchalantly declare that the value of our homes will drop 20% in the next year or even 30 or 40%. And then 12 months later, when they're proven spectacularly wrong, that you're not going to get an apology. Because let's be clear, those kinds of sensationalist predictions, which are common in Australian media, do cause considerable grief in the community. When people are dealing with COVID, high inflation, rising interest rates, climate disasters, war in Europe and earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, the mental health consequences can be considerable. And the last thing that anybody wants to be told is that the value of their home is likely to fall massively by as much as 30 or 40%. Now, if you're a family who recently bought a home or an investment property, it causes a high degree of stress to be told, almost daily in some cases, that the asset you've just bought is going to be worth less than your mortgage. And if you're planning to buy real estate in the next month or two, and then you read that values are going to fall 20 or 25%, and therefore you decide not to buy, it's a matter of major consequence when you discover that all those dire predictions were wrong and values actually rose. And therefore you missed out on perhaps $50,000 or $100,000 in capital growth because you believed the shallow media. And in case you think this is idle speculation, this is the exact scenario that played out in 2020 and 2021. And it's been playing out again in 2022 and the beginning of 2023 as well. The doomsday forecasters have been right. Property values would have fallen 10 or 15% in the past 12 months. And bank economists in particular have made those sorts of forecasts. But according to most of the major research sources, nothing of the kind has happened. According to Domain, half of our capital cities had rises in prices in 2022 and the combined regions rose also. According to PropTrack, the national average in 2022 was a decrease of just 3% property values, despite all those rapid-fire interest rate rises. And according to SQM Research, house values nationally remain 7% higher than a year ago, with particularly strong growth in the regional markets. That brings me to the latest item of serious misinformation that has been inflicted on Australian consumers. That is that the trend of people leaving the bigger cities and moving to the regions or the smaller cities is absolutely over. Recent articles simply and emphatically have declared that it's finished. Everyone apparently is now moving back to the big cities. Well, let me tell you, nothing of the sort is happening. Like so much of the misinformation that appears in mainstream media, these headlines were generated by a press release from the biggest media tarts in the industry, CoreLogic. They did a shallow analysis of some of the high-profile regional markets around Australia, like Byron Bay, noted that the values had dropped recently, and interpreted that to mean that the move to the regions was over, finished. One of the more scurrilous newspapers declared the Australian love affair with moving out of the big cities during COVID-19 has ended. Now, that short statement contained a number of key errors. The so-called love affair is not over, and it's not a phenomenon that happened during or because of COVID. The alleged journalists who wrote this should hang their head in shame, but I'm quite certain that if it was shown to them how wrong they were, they really wouldn't give a damn. So here's what's really happening in our regional markets. Some of those iconic locations, like Byron Bay, the Central Coast, and the Sunshine Coast, are certainly no longer booming. They all had extraordinary price growth over 2 to 3 years, but that upcycle has come to an end for now, as it inevitably must. But does that mean that no one's moving to those regions anymore, as multiple articles in media have suggested? Well, no, it means nothing of the sort. What it means only is that the level of extraordinary price growth could not continue indefinitely, and there's been an inevitable slowdown in those specific locations. But elsewhere across regional Australia, there are many locations with considerable price growth still. Indeed, most locations across regional Australia are still growing. According to Domain's latest data, house prices in many regional areas across Australia are still considerably higher than a year ago. And on top of this, 92% of regional local government areas witnessed price growth over the last quarter of 2022. And I'll repeat that, 92% have shown price growth recently. And let me repeat what I have said very often. The trend of people moving to regional areas is a long-term trend which started long before the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns came along. Sydney has been losing population to internal migration in large numbers for more than 10 years. And it's a trend that continues because it's about affordability and it's about lifestyle enabled by technology, which means the ability to work remotely. So ignore the white noise in the media. The exodus continues and is unlikely to stop anytime soon.